Welcome everyone to this week in Svelte episode. I think it's 90, right? I can't remember. I lose track. I'm Paolo. I will be your host for today. And it should be. We can check probably. Let me see. It's 80, not 90. 80. It's still a round number, a cool number. So today, as you can see, we can start with the changelog and then we will have a community showcase. We will probably stop here today. We have quite a bit to go over the changelog, but we don't have any other topic because we have started to run out of topics. So please suggest any topic. You can join our Discord, svelte.dev/chat, and suggest any topic for this week in Svelte that you might be interested in. But today we still have a very cool community showcase. It will still be very fun. So let's go over the changelog so that we can move to the interesting bit later. Okay, so first thing first, allow import from Svelte Legacy in SSR. This was a bug where basically if you try to import from Svelte Legacy, it will error out in SSR. Recreate Svelte date methods derived if they are destroyed. This was a slight bug with Svelte date, with how Svelte date works. So if you were using Svelte date inside a derived, the underlying derived would have been destroyed, and that's something that it was fixed. And then there was a lot of migration. So migrate slot usages. I think we went over this last week already, but we added a lot of migration stuff. So now slots are also migrated. So if you have a slot, it will be migrated to a render. And if you are using $slots somewhere with bracket member expression, that will also be migrated correctly. And this was actually suggested last week on stream to migrate Svelte self, and now it's actually working. So if you are using Svelte self, now it will be automatically migrated for you. We got type for the search element, which we're missing. Improve reconciliation of inert each block rows, and add media listener immediately when using bind post. So this was something like if you are using bind pause on some audio or video element, it was not working before. And by the way, it was not even working in Svelte 4. So this was interesting. Ensure set text applies coercion to object before diff. This is something that basically there was this bug that if you, depending on how you would render an array on the page, sometimes it would react because we were calling to string under the hood, sometimes not. This time it will it fixed those. This also was interesting because basically when we are using a custom element like web components and stuff like that have kind of a weird ruling around them. And the virtual class attribute, so if you don't have any class but you're pointing to that element in CSS, it's adding a class attribute, and that class attribute needs to be set using set attribute for custom elements, because again they have weird ruling around. And if that was the only attribute, we were not actually updating it, because if it's completely static, so if it was not dynamic, we basically just skip going over that. This is actually a breaking change, although like it's not really a breaking change. I don't know if you know, like, but you can have style props, and I want to show you. So, let's say that you have Svelte 5 previewer cell. Let's say that you have a component button, for example, right? And you want to have a button here, hi, and you want to style it, but you also want to provide the user with some way to like change your styling. So let's say that I have button and I have, I don't know, border, radius, 1 rem, actually 100 Vmax, just for make it. And then let's say that I want to do background color. And what I can do is I can use a variable. So let's say BG. By default will be, I don't know. Sorry. I'm dying. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. Please tell my wife that I love her. Okay, so we have this Rebecca Parpool by default, but you want to be able to pass, sorry, this BG property by outside. So you can import, import button from button.svelte. And let's say that I want to use my button. By default, it will look like this, which is ugly, to be fair, but let's style it a bit better. So border 0, padding, so 0.5 rem, and maybe 1 rem on the long side. So we have this nice button, right? But the problem is that now you are kind of stuck to this. And if you want to pass some styling, you can use custom props. And you can basically just do BG is equal to red, and this will work. So how does this work? Like, this is called, like, those are called style props. And if you take a look at the HTML generated, it's basically wrapping your component into another component, which is a Svelte CSS wrapper with display contents so that it doesn't affect CSS, and then is creating this variable bgred on it. So it will be like contained inside this thing, and you can actually pass sorry, you can pass stuff around this way. Initially, this was creating a div, but the problem is that if you wrap these into a p tag, for example, and we add a div inside a p tag, that is invalid HTML. So that was a problem, and we changed it. So before it was adding a div, and now it's adding this Svelte CSS wrapper, which is cool. By the way, the number, because Captain Coleman say, does anyone knows the number for 911? Which I guess it's a fun joke. And Terry saying in Italy is 112, but that's not actually true. Like a 112 is the 911 for like emergencies and stuff like that. Like not like medical emergency. Like if you're being robbed, you can call 112. But if you are dying, like I was doing, you need to call the 118. That's just fun fact for you. If you are dying in Italy, you can call 118. So let's see if there are any other questions. Get some water, hydrate, eat some honey. And could Svelte compile BG on the p tag? Well, I mean, we could probably, but like it's very limited anyway, because if you have a wrapper, like let's say that I have, I don't know, a div here, I shouldn't, I mean, this is also problematic, but let's say I have a span here, I shouldn't compile the BG to the P in this way. So that can only happen if you have only one element around the button, maybe. But I don't think it's worth, probably. Yeah, obviously, as Stalky saying, on an element, you can actually do style BG is equal red. So it's probably fine too, if you want. I think Stalky what he was saying is, instead of adding an extra element around these, we could statically determine that we can add the BG to the P itself instead of instead of that. I don't know if it's worth it, to be fair, because like it's a lot of extra code for not much gain. So yeah, that's something fun. Make immutable option work more correctly. Immutable, it's not something I don't know if we actually, yeah, I think it's deprecated in Svelte 5 and we actually get a warning, but it was not working for legacy mode. So immutable, it's where basically you are declaring that you will always change the whole object, so instead of a part of it. And that allowed Svelte 4 to like do something more, like instead of checking every single like part of the object, we could skip something. But you could have done these Svelte options immutable, but in Svelte 4, in Svelte 5 is being deprecated and it will have no effect. If you are in legacy mode, this is basically saying that, like, for example, count is equal to 0. It means that if you do count.count plus 1 plus equal 1, this will not be reactive. But count.count, is this a bug? Maybe it's a bug. I think I mean, we keep finding bugs here. If I remove immutable, it should work, right? Yeah, I think it's a bug. Okay, we keep finding bugs during this week in Svelte, and I love it. Regardless, the point is, I will investigate. Well, let's open the old REPL just to take a look at what immutable is. So this in theory means that this will not work. You see, like if you remove immutable, Svelte needs to check what? I am confused. Oh, because because it's I need to use on click. Svelte options immutable. So this will not work because basically by doing immutable, you are gaining a bit of performance by foregoing the ability to assign a property of an object instead of the whole object. So to make it work, I should basically do count is equal to count. What am I doing? I can do this. Count.count plus 1. So if I do this, I'm actually reassigning the whole object, and now this works even with immutable. But you can't reassign part of the object. And so this was not working in legacy mode in Svelte, and apparently it's not working either for some reason. So we'll need to fix this bug. But um, yeah, in Svelte 5, it really doesn't make sense. So I can get why we are getting this. So let's close this and let's go to the other. Apply class style directive after attributes. Okay. Oh, okay. So this was a bug that was actually open from quite some times. And because you have the class and style attribute, and what could happen is that you could have a situation where you are applying a class directive, like class dark is equal get dark here. So you have this function like this, function get dark is equal to return true. So this should in theory always have the dark class. But then you could also have something like class is equal to get class that returns something else. Function get class big, for example, return big. And basically what happens is that these was overriding, like one of these was overriding the other. So it was a bug that was opened like 2 or 3 times. So it's something that actually people stumble across, and so it was fixed. Exclude custom elements from HTML3 validation. Again, this is another, I don't want to like join the web component are bad discourse that is going on Twitter, but yeah, I mean, this kind of shows you that like custom element really needs a lot of extra code to make them work inside a framework. So that's something. So let's go over the Svelte kit releases, because we actually had this. It was a very minor like update, like it's a chore. I'm just updating the dependencies, but this was actually a breaking change because they like cookie added strengthen their validation for cookies. And so if you are using cookie 0.7.0, which we reverted, basically you can't use cookie with a dash in it, no, with a colon in it, sorry. And so like there are like, for example, Paraglide, which is one of the I18 library for Svelte kit, was actually using a cookie with a colon. They also fixed that part, but it was basically creating problem, so we reverted it. We also had to revert these later because like this is something that it's more on the bundling side. So every time you have a new build of SvelteKit, there is a version number that SvelteKit uses internally, so that if they pull the version and they see that on the server there is a different version, they disable client-side routing so that when you click on a link, you actually get the updated code, which is pretty cool. Like, it's sweet, the fact that you can just update your code and every user will get the new version after the first navigation. It's pretty sweet. But this was causing like every time you create these bundles, even if you didn't change a file, it will like change the hash of the file because the version changed. So it was published for a bit that this was allowed to don't affect the hashes of the file that you didn't touch. But this was also problematic for some reason. So I think like we can make it work, but it was reverted quickly. This was also like, if you are using SvelteLab, you might have end up looking something like this, because inside web container, I don't know why, don't ask me why, if you throw an error on the server, Vite is trying to rewrite the stack traces and By doing that, it's also causing a new error, which was shown as a different. So if I do throw new error, uh, if you ever used the Svelte Lab, you would have seen a different error here, something like line 0, like unknown useful error, because Vite was trying to rewrite the stack trace, and it was throwing while trying to do so. So it was swallowing the error. And it was a pretty simple fix, just a try catch. Use absolute links in JSDoc comments. Correctly handle relative paths when fetching assets on the server. Decode non-hashy anchor hashes when scrolling into view. I always find fascinating this thing because, I mean, this is probably referring to when you go to, like, if in an href, you can go like pound something and it will link to a part of the page that has that name, that ID, and someone is probably using non-hashy code there, and it was not working. And I always find fascinating how you end up in this situation. Oh, page response missing CSP and link headers when return promising load. So this was fixed, which is interesting. CSP is one of the worst part of web development for me because it's very difficult to deal with. And link headers are headers that SvelteKit add to every request to start preloading the code while the request is still going on. It's very fascinating. So like literally when you are requesting the HTML page, you are already requesting every JavaScript that you need to make it very, very fast. Update service worker when a new version is detected. Oh, this is sweet. If you ever work with service workers are a bit of a pain to maintain, in the sense that if you get a user on an old version and they don't update the page, they are basically stuck there forever. Like if they have a page open and they never close it, they are stuck there forever and you can't communicate with them. So it's very bad. And this is actually part of something that will work better. Mark script in libraries as being side effect free by default. Svelte parse markup. Yeah. Provides Svelte 5 component migration. Yeah. Oh, this was actually published. So correctly position quick fixes in instance and module. I actually worked on this because if you tried to mute, like ignore a comment that was in the script tag, it was positioning the ignore in the wrong position. So this is pretty interesting. We get some fix. Also, like the changelog is over. Before going on with the sorry, I can talk. With the showcase. First thing first, let's see if there are any questions. Would it be possible to showcase of a synchronous data update without using enance for forms? Possibly. Like if you join the server, you can, or you can even like write me in private, because like tell me what you want to see. I will probably make it work. So um, don't you dare think some. I mean, yeah, it's true. But in that case, like the case of that breaking change, where it is in SvelteKit, in this case, this is actually correct, because below 1.0, I don't know if you know it, everything is like it's the wild west. Like before 1.0, you can make breaking changes even in a patch. which kind of makes sense because like if you are below 1.0, it means that it's actively in development, the library, so like it's fine. Usually at least what I do in my libraries is that if I need to include a breaking change below 1.0, I try to go with a minor so that at least you know that it's something a bit more than a patch. Yeah, no, Starkey, yeah, exactly. Change to the first non-zero version part means breaking. That is not always true in below zero, like 1.0, because in theory, like you can still like publish a minor because it's a minor. So no nashi as in emoji or Japanese alphabet. I don't know what was the actual use case. Let me see, because probably there is an issue related. Uh, relative path. Oh, it was not even so. It wasn't what I was talking about. It was probably. Hmm. I mean, I don't know how Master Macrella actually understood the issue because, or maybe from the reproduction. Yeah. So it's actually something different than what I was thinking. Okay, but enough of me talking. Let me introduce. I will remove my screen and let me introduce Gautier. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly. Sorry if I didn't.
Perfect. Hi
Okay.
everyone.
And so he recently published a new library and he's gonna showcase it for us. The library is called formgator, and I will share your screen and leave for you the stage. As usual, if you have any question about the library, drop them in chat so that later we can have a Q&A.
So yeah, I just released formgator, which is a tiny npm library about validation. That's true. But instead of your usual ZOD, AJV, or whatever, it validates form data and URL search params objects. So let's get right into it. I have this form. It's a pure SvelteKit application, vanilla SvelteKit. So the form is there. I'm using only SvelteKit for now. So I have this use enhance action on my form. And I have multiple inputs. So an input of type text, of type datetime local, a select multiple. I'm trying to read the chat at the same time, so feel free to ask questions. I'll try to multitask. I have an input of type file, a type checkbox, and a text area, and of course a submit button. And what I'm building is a form handled by SvelteKit. I don't need an API. I'm doing something simple. And what you are used to do, what you do according to the documentation, is first get your form object out of request.formData. And this is a form data object. And then you can retrieve properties on this form through .get or .get all, depending on if your field, your input, produces one or many values. So this works. So let's create a post with a dummy date, add some tags to it, a banner image, it's true. Let's check it, and body. And yeah, you click publish and you get your object. So that works, but that's not safe. What if someone, if you are building a user-facing website, what if someone decide to send something that's not valid? For instance, here I have a list of tags. What if instead of TypeScript, someone decides to send TypeScript be evil? And yeah, it just works. Our SvelteKit website will happily accept this. So what you have to do next is some kind of validation. And these form objects are weird. For instance, when you have an input of type checkbox, you are not sending true or false as you would be sending in JSON. Instead, you would be sending on if the checkbox is checked, or nothing if it's empty. And some other things gets weird. For instance, if your banner image there is unset, let me get this, it will not send the file. I hope I'm being clear. Instead, it will send, oh, I have sent something. I will resend it with an empty file. Here. Click publish. And there, my file object is not null. It's a file of size 0 of name an empty string. Well, HTML forms are built with a lot of weird specification. It's in the specification, but it's weird, and it's not like the JSON you are used to build things with. So I came up with formgator, which is a pure vanilla JS library that will take your form object and will parse it through a schema. And instead of giving you on or null, it will actually give you the booleans you are used to love. And to do that, I tried to create the developer experience as straightforward as possible. So you would have formgator here. And instead of doing that, you'll have const data equals fg.form. You are declaring a new form, and I will declare some inputs on it. And these inputs will have the exact same name. formgator chomp chomp, absolutely. We'll have the exact same name, not as the input type you are expecting, the output type, sorry, I said as the output type, so not like z.string, but instead you would be using the same input type that you are using. I said the same thing twice, but in different words. So title is an input of type text. Publication date is an input of date of type date time local. What's next? Tags is an input of type select. And what are the values? The values are actually the select is generated here out of a list of tags. So I can import these tags. And one thing specific, it has multiple on it. So I'll declare multiple there. What's next? Banner is a file. Newsletter is a checkbox, and content is a text area. And why does it matter? formgator comes with all these properties, these inputs, so that you can actually pre-validate, you can actually have the exact same validation mechanism as the browser. So for instance, the difference between text and text area is that text area allows new lines while text does not. So if I try to, so that works. If I add a new line in there between this week and in Svelte, oh, I need to save first. That's true. I will need to save first. Okay, let's start again. There, an error is thrown. and my error says that title is invalid, it has an invalid value because it contains a new line, and issues as these tags, issues as this tags property, so it maps to tags here, and it says that TypeScript b evil is not part of the list of allowed values. So if I remove that, one less error, still title invalid value, and the other fields are accepted. And if I remove this new line and put back a space in there, it works. So this will enforce the browser validation mechanisms that you are used to work with, server side. And what's more, it also gives you complete type safety over what your output is. So for instance, title is string or null. Why is that so? In HTML, there's a difference between empty and invalid. For instance, if I put here, instead of required, I put min length equals 1, you would be expecting that this input is valid if the length is between 1 and 255. That's not true, because unless required is specified, an empty field is always valid. So there is a functional difference between min length 1 and required, and that's what formgator enforces there. When an output is set to null, it means that the input is empty. So for instance, this input here is empty. And when you start setting it, then it will have a proper value. So that's why the date is of type string or null. So to enforce all your values, all your non-optional values to be defined, you can add require true to it. And you can see there that all your validation properties that you are used to work with in HTML are defined there. So I can use max length 255. Datetime local also as required. And it also supports min and max. I have not defined anything there, but you could, for instance, ensure that the publication date is in the future. Tags, well, nothing fancy here. Tags, the output of tags is completely typed. It's a list of these possible values. And it is so because tags, this is declared as const. Don't forget to declare it as const, otherwise you would just have here just a list of string. So if you expect strong type safety, declare your list of options as const. Banner is a file, which is optional, but I could make it require true, and this will take care of the special edge case of the empty file of size 0 with an empty name. You can also add required to a checkbox, and it works exactly the same as in the browser. It means that the checkbox must be set to true, must be checked. So like when you say you read the conditions, well, that's required true on the checkbox. And content text area has no limit whatsoever, but I could set one there. Okay, so now it's getting slightly better. I should add, so yeah, title. So yeah, this should be required too. That's true. And there, this is much closer to what I would expect as a type-safe output of a library that also mirrors the validation mechanism of the browser. And well, that's cool. That works. But the developer experience would not be that good without a SvelteKit integration. So that's what we'll see right after I try that. Yeah, so it works. And this is great from a type safety perspective because you get your outputs correctly. If you are also interested in having type safe errors, you can do so by using, so in this case, when using parse, it's the same as that. It throws an error if it's invalid. You can use safe parse instead, and it will always return a value And if data.success is true, you can log data.data. Its name is bad, that's true. Otherwise, you can log data.error. And this will have the same shape as your input form, and it maps all possible fields to all possible issues. Okay, so let's take a look at this VelKit integration. Why did I build that? I built it so that you have type safety out of the box through your form prop. So if I add export let form there, I can ensure and get the error messages directly in there. And how to do that? I'll just copy the fields there and wrap my function into a form gate. It's kind of a decorator if you think about it. It wraps a function with additional arguments, and it will add there as first argument a data object. You can name it whatever you want. The integration does not care. And what you get afterwards is all the event properties that you are used to work with in the VelKit server side. So I don't need them anymore, and I can just do console.log data. And I have this thing that is properly typed, same as before, except that I removed the boilerplate. Let's take a look at what I get client-side. Client-side, I get a proper object with all accepted and issued issues fields, issues errors coming out of the validation library. And I can, for instance, if form dot, let me get my autocompletion working, form dot issues dot title, and there I can strong, let's add it there, dot message, okay. Let's make strong red. Yeah, why not that darker? Okay. We have our title there, and let's make it invalid. How can I make it invalid? For instance, let's add another, why not, another validation step. If you are used to that, I copied the API. It's a total ripoff. You have refine that can help, that adds a predicate to the validation pipeline. You have transform that transforms a value into another value, and you also have optional. You have optional, which will make the fields not nullable but optional. We'll get into that later if I have time. But let's add a new refine property and refine function, and that's my title. And let's say that the title must start with Z. Starts with the. Okay, and add a custom error message. Title must start with Z. Okay, and there we have it. Let's try. So this week in Svelte, let's publish it sometime in the future. It's obviously Svelte, and it's number 80. And yeah, title must start with Z and fully type safe. Let's talk a bit about packaging, bundling, and things like that. If you care about your node module getting fat, formgator has 0 dependencies. It ships in 100K, 100 kilobytes of data. And half of this size is source maps, and I will remove them for the V1 version. So when it gets stable, it also gets lighter. Cool stuff. So if you are trying formgator right now, source maps are enabled for you to have correct error messages, and it will get Thank you, Vitaly. And it will get removed in the future. And when bundled, well, the entire library is tree shakeable. And for instance, if you are using form, email, text, number, and let's add file, why not? The whole bundle will be 4 kilobytes. So pretty lightweight. You can share it, you can embed it in your edge functions without much consideration. It's light. And one other cool thing about this library is that since it only uses standard primitives like form data, URL, such params, it runs in the browser. I'm not sure what you can do with that. Let me zoom a bit for you. But you can use it in the browser. So for instance, let's define a list of airports there. A landing at fields, an email address is, one weird stuff. You might not know that, but the input type email accepts a multiple attribute. And what it means is that it will allow a list of email addresses comma separated. So if I do Gautier@example.com, Gautier@example.net, this is not valid. I should add a comma there. Okay, let's land at Orly, because why not? 7:22 a.m. for up to 5:50 and include a taxi. And here on my submit, I transform my current target into a form data. So my current target is this form element. And then I parse it into this object, and I will get something that is easier to send over JSON, for instance. So this is a proper JSON object that you can send over the wire, GraphQL, whatever. And this concludes my showcase, I guess. Unless you have questions, I'm on Discord and YouTube. I'd be very happy to answer.
Let me add myself back to it. Let's see if anybody has any question. In the meantime, very cool. Like, I think I will probably try this at work, because like we are in the process of like we need to rewrite the errors, and like we want something like this to like have a clear structure to all the errors and stuff like that. So I think it will be interesting to see. So very interesting. Yeah. I like that you can basically like declare the thing that you expect and have it, and especially with the refine stuff. I was about to ask you while you presented to me. Like you,
Yeah.
I was thinking, I wonder if it's possible to have specific validation, and you actually answered to it.
A
So,
lot of goodies included out of the box. So for instance, date outputs as string, but you can ask it like you would in native JavaScript, value as number and value as date. Well, you have as date and as number there.
mhm.
So
Okay.
now date is of type date. So a lot to check out in the documentation,
Yeah.
and I hope it gets useful.
Yeah, I will actually take a look. Captain Codeman is saying something like providing some use actions to set input validation attribute and validity state might be neat. Yeah, that will be.
You don't even need it. That's what's great. Your browser already does it for you when you click an input of type submit.
Yeah, I think what Captain Codeman is saying is that like if you have this formgate object, you
Yeah.
could generate a series of action that I
Oh
can
yeah.
apply to elements, so that like I get the same error messages, for example, in the validity state, and also if I don't automatically, like if I don't set required on the client, it will add required to the button. But I guess like it's an extra thing, but it's a good idea in my opinion. You can probably explore this a bit.
I'm
So
working on something similar. I'm working on outputting HTML attributes out of the form,
yeah.
and it looks roughly like this. So you have your attributes, and if it's false or undefined, it gets removed. And for instance, if it's a regular expression, like in pattern, it will output, it will splat your attributes directly. Not that clear, I'm aware. Let
No,
me.
I think it's clear.
So instead, you would be able to do splat
Hmm.
and form dot input dot what's the name landing, and
Hmm.
it will put whatever is needed at the right place.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I will definitely take a look at this. It's very interesting. Thank you for presenting. And I don't think we have any other. Oh, there is a question. Sorry. So ceph parse and parse difference is just the return interface. I would guess is the same as Zod, right? Parse
Yeah,
is throwing, ceph parse is returning an object with like success and data or success and error. So basically, if you want your application to panic, to like throw, if you can just use parse. If you don't want to throw and you want to handle stuff differently, you can get safe parse. Yeah. Mm, so thinking out loudly and asking fields and name address, for example, maybe to group several inputs like to address line and country select box under one address object. Is it possible? I mean, that will like it will be like HTML job to do, in my opinion. Like, it's not in the library itself, uh, but
yes, there's no nesting possible in HTML forms.
yeah.
So in the end, you'll just get a flat list of
Mhm.
address fields.
Yeah, there are some like form data parsing libraries that use some convention. Like if you do, I don't know, name square bracket zero dot, I don't know, title, that will mean the first object of the name array and the title property, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean that's kind of pushing the limit of what HTML can do.
Yeah, you can do that, but it it ends up sent like this.
Yeah, exactly. Now, like some like some form data element, what they do is they take this string and they convert it in an actual object that has a title as an array and at the zeroth element as an object with the name of this week in Svelte. So they do the work for you, and so you can send this thing like that. But the only problem that I see with this kind of libraries is that you are still basing everything on a convention. Like there's no, like you need to adhere to their convention, which might be like problematic in some point, like at some point, like if a new joiner join your team and it doesn't know about this convention, it might get confused and like it's a bit more difficult. They are also asking, would it be possible to generate a form from the formgate data?
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. It's
I
not
think
done,
it's
but
possible. I don't think it will be super easy because like building a form from an object is like you need to like map between a type and an actual input, and you might end up in a situation every time I tried like I go into this kind of cycle in which at one point I have the idea and say, oh, I can use this, like I can take this object and convert it into a form, and then I start implementing it and I realize that it's super difficult to do and I forgot about that. And like then after 6 months I remember, oh, and I have the same idea and and
yeah,
that.
it could be useful for prototyping, but when you end up having a product, you want some
Yeah,
columns in your form and some visual rhythm that you
yeah,
cannot
exactly,
get with auto-generated forms.
exactly. Okay, thank you very much, Gautier, and thank
Thank
you
you a
for
lot
presenting.
for inviting me.
And I'll see you in the Discord. Join the
Yeah,
Discord. Okay, I think we are basically done. I will remove you, Gautier. I don't know if you want to stay up to like you can stay. Um, do you want me to remove, or do you want to stay and talk about?
Okay, staying with your conclusion.
Okay. So I mean, feel free to remove yourself if you want to be removed, because we are actually almost done. I just want to remind you that Svelte Summit is in 8 days. Wow, it's like next week. I'm hyped, and we actually got the list of speakers now. So we will have David Hunt talking about behavioral testing with SvelteKit, which is interesting. James Camilleri talking about presentation with SvelteKit and PartyKit, very interesting. Our Scott from Syntax, which I accidentally opened Scott profile. Scott from Syntax, which is showing us about local first, which is super interesting. Henry Lai about demystifying client and server rendering in SvelteKit. Elevating the DX of using Storybook for Svelte. If you never use Storybook, just give it a try because it's pretty interesting. And I think they are gonna talk about the plugin for Svelte. Michael, which is building a minimum viable rich text editor with Svelte 5. Michael, it's a genius. Like he basically is trying to redefine the internet. So keep an eye for it. Lesson learned for building a mobile app with Tauri and SvelteKit. I'm hyped because I want to try Tauri so bad, and I will sooner or later. Elron headless WordPress shortcode as Svelte component. So we even get a bit of drama, WordPress drama in Svelte Summit. Marking country a scrolly telling saga. Okay, between me and you and everybody watching this, I kind of hate scrolly telling because I every time it looks janky, because if I'm scrolling, like I never scroll at a linear pace. So you need to get it really right. But it's still interesting to see what they are doing. And then we have a couple of to be announced talk, which who knows what will be about. And obviously, a huge shout out to the masters of ceremony, Brittany and Kevin, as usual. And yep. And if you want to sponsor, but I mean, next week, I'm hyped. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you, Getter, again. Sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing your name so bad. And thank you everybody. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this time, and I'll see you guys. Oh, they actually removed my button to start the music at the same time as the logo. So I will put the logo and then start the music. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.